Okay, welcome to episode 136 of an Evolving Man podcast. Today I'm excited to be speaking to Neil Harding. Neil is a survivor of abuse during his time as a boarder at Dilworth School in Auckland, New Zealand. In a powerful interview on News Talk's ZB's Nutters Club, he shared his personal journey of surviving abuse while living in the school's residential system. Since speaking out, Neil has been an advocate for safeguarding reform in boarding schools and continues to raise awareness of abuse survivors' rights in New Zealand. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you. Thank you, Piers.
Yeah, thank you so much for agreeing to come and speak today. And how I'd love to begin our conversation is for you to share a bit of your journey. You know, what, what drew you into this work?
It was interesting because it in Christmas Day 2017, I went to Christmas with family and came home, and there was this Audi wedged in the fence of my front yard, and a drunk driver had crashed through the fence and had been obviously what you do is you quickly whip the driver home so they don't get charged with drunk driving because it's Christmas Day. So I rang the police, and as I was waiting for the police to arrive, a car pulled up I live on a roundabout,
Mm,
and a car pulled up, and there was a young woman in the passenger seat. The window was down. The next thing I see, the barrel of a rifle come out through the window. And
mm,
before I had time to get out the way, she pointed it at me and pulled the trigger, and it went bang. And in that moment, I thought I'd been shot.
mm.
But when I wasn't shot, I then realized it was actually a cap gun. It wasn't actually a real rifle.
Wow.
Um, what happened is that I had a bit of a breakdown a couple of weeks later, and the police said, "Look, uh, it was it was a cap gun. It wasn't a real gun. She wasn't in any trouble. Um, uh, so they needed to treat it for what it was, not for what I thought it was." And um, so that was a little bit underwhelming, the response of police. Um, so I sought counselling. Um, my counsellor expertly then sort of asked me, when have you not been validated by authority in the past? And I said, well, in 1997, I went to the police to report my sexual abuse as a child, and all they would do, they wouldn't take a statement from me. All they would do was to tell me that two of my perpetrators were already known and convicted pedophiles, and that's all they were going to do. At that point, she sort of stopped the session and said, okay, well, now we've got child sexual abuse. We're going into a different area of counselling, and and then the real counselling started. What I then did is I believed that what the grooming and abuse that had happened to me, I'd always characterize as attempted abuse because I hadn't been sodomized. When the men had made their advances on me after grooming me, I'd kind of got out of there before anything major had happened. Um, Not diminishing what happened to me and the breach of trust and the terror that I felt, but the fact that I wasn't sodomized made me question whether I was actually an abuse victim or not. And I'd always characterized my abuse as attempted abuse. Um, and now I'm sort of getting more comfortable with saying that I am an abuse victim, um, because I'm mindful of the fact if I'm in a group in a room full of people that have been raped or sodomized, I sort of would question whether I have the right to be in the room. Um, the so the thing about that was I've lost my train of thought. Um, so I went to the police. They didn't. I thought it was attempted abuse. So yeah, I've got it again. So I thought that what happened to me wasn't that serious, and it felt incomplete. I always felt that it hadn't been resolved. And I thought the way to try and resolve it would be to ensure the school is safe now. So I'd been on the board of my local high school, um, board of trustees of the school. And so I wrote a report to the current board of Dilworth, as if, and I wrote a report in a way that they would have to do something.
Mm-hmm.
um, to ensure that it's safe. So I asked them questions of their child safety policy, and I asked them questions of their pathway for dealing with historical abuse. And we began what in that initial report, I used the word collaboration, I think 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to assist them in ensuring it's safe to allow me to have some sense of healing
Yeah.
and finding
Yeah.
peace. I don't like the word closure. Um,
Mm.
I don't think, closure's for me is the nails in the coffin, you know.
Yeah.
Um, we never
Yeah.
we never get closure from these experiences, particularly as children. They live with us. So I just wanted to sort of have some peace
Mm-hmm.
and get it to a point where I could move on,
Mm-hmm.
and put it behind me. I then just sort of one of the things that had really got me was the fact that my housemaster at the time had sent me at night to the Scoutmaster's place by myself, where he lay me down on a sheepskin rug and then began something that I then needed to get out of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I always had this thing of there was either collusion, incompetency, or naivety from him as a housemaster. And I suspected that there may have been a pedophile ring. And so
Mm-hmm.
once I got a little bit of a sniff that maybe it wasn't just me, maybe there might have been others,
Mm-hmm.
um, the collaboration seemed to stop. And suddenly it became a little bit combative.
Yeah.
And that's been my experience in the last 7.5 years, is that the institution is trying to um, shut down and hide and not be accountable to its role
Mm-hmm.
in the abuse of boys. And we then had a this was in around a royal commission we had in New Zealand
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
abuse and state care. And I presented to the Royal Commission, and then they asked me to speak at a public hearing. So I spoke at the public hearing at the Royal Commission and gave some input into what I feel are important steps in a redress process and what that should look like. Um, and pretty much the Dilworth, the current trust board, are pretty much stonewalled me the whole way and
Really.
see me as a threat, as an enemy. I established a class action
Mm-hmm.
of a litigation funder, a KC,
Mm-hmm.
King's Counsel, a barrister, and about 4 or 5 lawyers who worked pro bono. And what we achieved was there are about 150 interlawyer exchanges, of which I was part of each one, and a difficult combative process where they just wouldn't budge a millimeter in terms of meeting any of our needs. And I presented to the trust board the issue of a survivor lens, of a survivor driven process, of what best practice was, but they just wouldn't hear it and still won't hear it. They don't want to take accountability for their role. They are protecting the people that were complicit. Um, they've apologized for what happened from what the pedophiles did, but it turns out at this stage now, there are over 300 boys that have been sexually abused. Here
300.
I was thinking it might just be not just me.
Mm-hmm.
And then the floodgates opened, and there are 150 that joined my class action. And what we got an independent inquiry, and this was conducted by Dame Sylvia Cartwright, who was a former Governor General of New Zealand, did the inquiry. And it was a 500-page report that was incredibly damning. There were 19 recommendations that came through this inquiry report, of which the trust board have said they will consider, but at this stage, haven't addressed the issues of collaboration. They haven't addressed the issues of a governance structure that is not really fit for purpose in terms of running a school. Dilworth itself was a school that was founded by one of the pioneer farmers of Auckland.
Mm-hmm.
His farm was covered two of the most expensive suburbs in Auckland. And him and his wife, Isabella, James and Isabella Dilworth, they excuse me, were childless, and they left their fortune. They wrote a will, which is the trust deed, to support boys from straitened circumstances to become good and useful citizens. That's pretty much quoted from their intent of the school. So it's one of the wealthiest trusts in the Southern Hemisphere. Its wealth is, the school say it's 1.1 billion, but we believe it's around 2.6, 2.7 billion. And very much the trust board is run by corporate trustees that manage a lot of money, and they get paid a lot of money to manage it. And so it's more of a business enterprise than a school. And the governance model is not really a school model. It's really much a business. And so these people that are running it are dealing with us as threats to the financial viability of this entity. And there seems to be there's an absence of any kind of moral compass. It's all about big business. And in fact, I had a meeting, because it's been 7.5 years as a whistleblower of just, it's been very intense, very taxing. And I spoke to the deputy chairman and the chairman at an apology that they did a few months back. I talked about the obstacles that have been put in front of me, and the deputy chairman smirked at me and said, "Yeah, that's how these things go," at an apology. In other words, it's a big game to him. He's enjoying it. And I said, not in school governance, maybe in the corporate world, but not in school governance. And he didn't. So there was almost corporate reptiles, really, that don't have any sense of compassion, completely. And so that's been our fight my fight really is about accountability. And the thing I've looked at with redress, and it's something that I presented to the Royal Commission, is I believe redress, there's 5 steps to redress. And the first step is recognition of what happened, recognition of the harm, and full recognition of what happened. Then there's remorse, and showing genuine remorse for that. Then there's refrain, putting in places policies and procedures and protocols to help prevent it. Then there's recompense, making financial, some financial restitution. And then there's the actual restitution is how do you undo it? How do you undo the damage? And from my perspective, that the healing comes at the end with the restitution. The institution think it's all about money and paying us money, and they're not recognizing their role. And so from my perspective, you applying that formula, there is no peace and healing, because it's fallen over, because they're not recognizing everything that's happened. They're not recognizing the school failed. They're not putting in the refrain that is not happening because the school is still covering up. So you're going, it's an unsafe school. If they can cover up the past, they can cover up the present, and they can cover up whatever happens in the future. So that's where I'm left. So there's been additional, the previous chairman was an old boy, and he's left the board. We've had some 2 new trustees come on recently. So we're hoping that these 2 new trustees will hopefully create some kind of change or shift in the attitude of the trust board in terms of the inquiry recommendations. Bit of a monologue there, but that's kind of
That's fascinating. Thank you. And yeah, really sad. And as you're speaking, it does remind me of my own boarding school. Christ Hospital has been in the press a lot. A lot of teachers have been arrested, put in prison, and the school has made measures. There's been a lot of pressure there's been a few people to have a statement of acknowledgement that came out a couple of years ago. And then I was at an event a couple of months ago where it was called, forget, it was basically a day for sexual abuse survivors. And there were 70 people there, 10 were online, but 60 were in person. And, the headmaster was there, the treasurer was there. It, it felt good that they were acknowledging it and they read the statement out. And yet, I was sat at the table and having lunch, and I was talking to the priest, um, and it's like I'm just questioning: has it really changed? Has it changed? And so, I feel what I'm seeing is yes, the teachers they're being vetted now, but what about the peers, peer on peer abuse? That's what I'm hearing that it's still going on, and I'm speaking to lawyers, not necessarily in that school, but generally in these schools. I'm also aware that I've had a power cut here, so at some point, my the battery of my laptop is going to die. So what I'm thinking
we
I
can
might
reconvene. If that happens, we'll just reconvene. Yeah,
yeah, let's do that.
just keep going until it happens.
Okay, great. I could yeah. These things happen obviously.
That's all good.
I've had it before where oh, it's back
Mm.
on again. There we go. Magic. There we go. The world is answered.
Mm.
Yeah, so I guess the question I have is coming out of this, what can we do? What can we do? You've got these powerful institutions, and what's your vision of what needs to happen, Neil? You've kind of been involved in this a
Look,
long time.
I have been in the spotlight, and I never thought this was going to happen. When I started this, I never envisaged that I would end up with this role, and it's been a really double-edged journey of one of finding meaning. I've been looking for peace and healing, but through it, I've found meaning.
Mm,
That what
mm,
happened to me can make a difference to others. And for me, that's in a kind of selfish way is the ultimate form of healing
mm,
is transforming what happened to me into a shift or change. And I've certainly feel that I have had some good gains, but there has been a real personal cost for that. And yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough on my health. It's been tough on the relationships with my family. I seem to have lost the people that I thought were close. Couldn't seem to stay with me on it, which is really it's been really hard because I don't feel like it's because I've been unhinged or lashing out or blaming or doing anything. They just for a lot of them, I think it's just too much for them, and they don't like it. They just I don't know. They don't see me. I think they only see themselves and how it reflects on themselves in some way. So it's that's been quite tough. So it's been quite lonely. Other than my partner's been incredibly supportive. She's what you'd call a canary. They take the canary down the mines. Um, when she falls off the perch, she tells me,
yeah.
which means it's yeah, it's too much. It's too intense, and so I'm guided by her.
Mm, mm,
Um, it does come in waves, but it's been very intense over 7.5 years, and it's a typical whistleblower experience where you just every obstacle that can be put in front of you gets put in front of you,
Yeah.
and it's just a question of perseverance, and I just can't stop. There's a point you're going. It's like I've got a good poker hand,
Yeah.
and I've gone
Yeah.
all in. You don't
Yeah.
fold when you're going all in. So I'm
Yeah.
sort of committed.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and
thank you.
the other thing is there's over 40 guys that have committed suicide of the Dilworth
Mm.
guys. So I'm doing it for them. They don't have a voice. And I feel that I can't sit down and stop speaking when they have no voice. And I know that there are many family members that are grateful for the work that I do on getting justice for them. And other victims or survivors, sorry, from other institutions have reached out. And so I give quite a lot of advocacy to others that are looking to do similar things and empowering them, which is good. But I stand on the shoulders of there's plenty of people over here that have forged a path for me because in '97 when I went to the police and they wouldn't take a statement from me, 20 years later in 2017, that same statement became Police Operation Beverly, became a named police operation 20 years later. And in the meantime, one of my pedophiles had died. One of them I got to put in prison. Another one, I'm the only victim at this point, so the police won't charge. Another one was grooming me, but I left the school before he made a move. Um, so I was surrounded. There were at least 5 pedophiles and the men that were around me. Um, and there was something about me that that they liked, unfortunately. I don't know what it was, but yeah.
Bless you. Bless you, Neil, for your
The,
work. It's so
look, the
powerful.
interesting look, the interesting thing is one of the guys I put in prison, I've actually got a parole hearing next week.
Mm.
So he's been sentenced to 5.5 years for abusing 10 boys, including myself. And we're about 4 years into a 5.5 year sentence, and
Mm.
I'll be attending the fifth parole hearing that I've had to plead with the parole board to keep him in prison. Now, when he got sent to prison, I thought he's going to prison.
Mm.
I didn't realize that a third of the way through his sentence and then pretty much 6 monthly each time after that, he gets another parole hearing and another parole hearing. And each time I've had to write letters to plead with them to keep him in prison. And I found that really challenging, is that
Mm.
the justice system, the parole board, it's like just why can't you just do what the judge said? Why do
Yeah.
we just have to keep second guessing the judge?
Mm.
Um, so that's what I have to do next week, and that takes its toll because I have to takes a lot of emotional energy
Mm.
in pleading with these people to keep him in prison. Um, because the thing is, he's lied, and
Mm.
I have got in some of the earlier submissions to the parole board, I've got them to ask certain questions. And the first one was, if he's truly remorseful, ask him if there's any more victims. He said, no, 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 I did not that I'm aware of. The next thing he gets charged with another 5. So there were 5 of us originally, and then another 5, and he got an extra 2 years put onto his sentence.
Mm.
Um, so he lies. But he's had the psychologist he's had his 12 visits with the psychologist, and they're quite satisfied that he has a low risk of reoffending, and it's like, but he lies.
Mm.
He's a master manipulator, has always been a manipulator. And I really distressed by the fact that they could consider that he's not a threat and a risk to kids.
Mm.
And I think 5.5 years for the destruction on these boys' lives. And he was front and central in a pedophile ring at the school. That he never got charged for his role in running a pedophile ring. He only got charged for, and he was a deputy headmaster. So, and covered up lots of abuse from other. So he was never really fully charged for the role that he had, only for the things he did himself. So
Yeah.
it's kind of tough because that child inside of me is just wanting to, the 11-year-old that
Yeah.
was abused by him is screaming, going, it's just not fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the other things that happened to me at his sentencing, when I went to a sentencing hearing, um, because I was a victim of child sexual assault, I have automatic name suppression. And I wanted my name suppression lifted. I'd had my name suppression lifted through the Royal Commission and
Mm.
had been in media. But with the sentencing, they said no. And I spoke to the police and they said, well, um, we are not going to support the release of your name suppression. We won't oppose it, but we will not support it. And that the judge is the one that's going to have to decide whether I'm allowed to have my name suppression released. And I found that really hard,
Mhm.
that as a 56-year-old man at the time, that some man on a seat there is going to decide whether I have a voice or not. And so I went to the sentencing waiting for my own verdict as to whether I was going to be allowed a voice. And I got taken into a side room 5 minutes before sentencing, and the Crown prosecutor informed me that the judge had given permission for my name suppression to be released,
Mhm.
um, to be lifted, sorry.
Mhm.
And so I had media waiting outside. So as I came out, I gave them the thumbs up, which meant they could go with the photo of me and not the silhouette that they had to create two versions of the article, one
Really?
with me in silhouette form and one with me with my face. So,
Mm.
and then I went into the room for sentencing. So I found that quite, if the process wasn't difficult enough at
Mm.
sentencing and reading
Yeah.
my victim impact statement, um, turning up not knowing if I was allowed a voice or not was difficult and challenging. Is that something you experienced in the UK?
I mean, I've heard, obviously, quite a few of my friends have been involved in the court cases at my school. So I've heard a lot, but then I've also heard of the Edinburgh Academy. And what I've heard, I don't know about name suppression. I think that we've had a similar thing. Certainly, I interviewed Giles Moffat, who's an amazing man doing work campaigning against the child sexual abuse in Edinburgh Academy. And I believe they were able to lift the name suppression, so they could be listed. But what I've heard about the cases over here is you're almost seen as you're guilty as the sexual abuse survivor. So they're really brutal with you, pulling you over the
Mm.
coals, and it's kind of traumatic in itself. And it kind of makes sense to me that it's like that because the system is they're like very much in that boarding school world. A lot of the QCs, have been to
Yeah,
boarding school. I think
yeah,
the statistics are from the Sutton report, it's about 70% have been to private schools, but most of them are probably boarding schools. A lot of the judges. And so with people speaking up, the system is not going to like that because, that was the unwritten rule, as George Orwell said, the omerta, it's you do not speak up. That was you do not grass. And
yeah,
so for me, the first time I had an article came out about 3 or 4 years ago in the Daily Telegraph and Sunday Telegraph, I felt all this terror in my body on the Friday. It was going live on Saturday. I'm like, what's this? And I was saying to my wife, it's like, I don't know what's going on. And then I was like, oh, because I'm about to speak up tomorrow.
Hmm.
and my body is responding that that is dangerous.
Hmm.
And
Yeah, I've looked at that and going, yeah, because we had that. We called
yeah,
it pimping. You don't pimp on anyone.
yeah.
And I must say, man, I must be the biggest Dilworth pimp in history.
Mm, mm.
And I'm proud of it.
Yeah, and bless you. It's like
Like,
that you're doing
yeah,
this, and it's like we said earlier before we began recording. It's like we're not doing this in isolation anymore. There's so many of us, like Giles Moffat. There's Alex Renton speaking up about his time at Eton, and also at not Heatherdown Prep. He was at Ashdown House, where Boris Johnson was. It's like there's so many of us now doing this. And before it was like, yeah, we were in isolation, one voice. But now it's like there's literally thousands, and I feel change is, it's it's coming very quickly, I think. You
well, I've got I've had a lot of support from media.
Mhm.
Amazing. I've got some amazing relationships with media. They've been so good to me. Society is very outraged,
Yeah.
but the the police, the legal system, I won't call it a justice system. The
Hmm.
legal system over here seems so insipid. You
Yeah.
know, the people that harbored and and were accessories to this wholesale abuse of sexual abuse of boys. The police say that the burden of proof required to charge them with perverting the course of justice is really high, and we haven't reached the threshold. And I'm going, 300 boys sexually abused hasn't reached a threshold yet for charging someone with perverting the course of justice. And we had a headmaster who was writing glowing references for pedophiles
Mhm.
who abused at other institutions, but somehow that doesn't seem to meet a threshold because he just could have been incompetent. Well, that's kind of what they did in the day. They just moved them along. It doesn't necessarily reach a point of kind of vicarious liability.
Yeah, it's 300. I mean,
And
what does it need to
I mean,
be?
you're going, and 40 suicides, and you're going, what has to happen before
Mm,
they'll apply that element of the law? And I look at it and go, well, if they can't retrospectively do it, then how about we make some changes that
mm.
if you do it in the future, it will. And so I mention this to the police, and they go, yeah, no, I think our laws are okay. And I'm going, give me something. I
Mm.
want to heal. Give me something.
Yeah.
I just the big thing that the Dilworth guys that I speak with, we just don't want this to happen to other kids.
Mm,
And for a lot of us, that's enough. We don't want money.
mm.
We're not wanting millions of dollars of payout. We just want to know that what happened to us won't happen.
Yeah.
And when they don't, when they're still covering up everything that they've done, we're going, we're not, you're not giving us an opportunity, you're denying us that ability to heal. And it's
Mhm.
just this, what I term institutional narcissism.
Yeah.
All they can do is see themselves. All they can do is see the reputation of the school. All they can do is see that they have a responsibility to the financial viability of the school and for those who are yet to come to the school. And they see that as their purpose is to just do that. They just don't see us. And they refuse to see us with any degree of compassion. They don't allow us a seat at the table to say, hey, there's this thing called survivor lens. We see things that others don't. We can see pitfalls. We can see things. So I, one of the things that happened was that I helped put together they did act on my report and they did redo their child safety policy. They got a
Yeah.
psychologist to redo the child safety policy, which She was quite proud of it. She was strutting around like a peacock because she'd had it peer reviewed overseas, and so I asked if I could see a draft of it, and they wouldn't send it to me. They said I can come in and meet with them at the school trust board offices. They sat me down in a room half an hour before I got to meet the psychologist to read the draft report. So it was, from my perspective, it was a token read. I didn't have sufficient time to really fully
Mm-hmm.
go through it, but I went through it and immediately saw an issue.
Mm-hmm.
There were two main issues that I had. One was they're talking about um, uh, that survivors telling their story, and I took exception. I'm triggered by the word. Let me tell your story to me, because it's like my response to that is no, no, no. But it's the truth. It's not a story.
Yeah.
And there's this big thing with survivors that they won't be believed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're saying, "Oh, come and tell me your story," for me, other people it doesn't trigger them, but for me it does. And we know with survivors that we all have different triggers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I said to to them at this meeting that I think sharing your experiences is probably a better way of framing it than
Mm-hmm.
telling us your story,
Yeah.
um, because that is more, it rings more of a kind of non-fiction. Tell us what happened rather than tell us your story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then the other thing I found, I said to the woman that wrote it, I said, "Do you have staff living on the school?"
Yeah.
And the school representative there said yes. And I said, "Well, that's your biggest risk factor." I was abused in the homes of two staff at the school, and groomed in another one. And then she turned around and said, "Oh, I didn't know you had staff living on the school."
Really?
And so there's this thing of, well, this is what we call survivor lens.
Mm-hmm.
I cast my eyes over this and saw that they'd missed a really big risk factor, that they have staff living on the school, and that probably needs to be addressed in their child safety policy. And they completely missed the survivor lens thing, because there was no real acknowledgement, or they haven't provided myself or any of us in a collaboration sense to have any kind of seat at the table to. And I approached the headmaster and the board,
Mm-hmm.
saying that I would be willing to um, assist them. And they've come back and said, "No, no, it's okay, mate. We're working with the students, with the parents and staff and experts in the field. No, thanks, but no thanks. They don't want my help."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going, that's the institutional narcissism. They're
Yeah.
denying me a seat at the table
Yeah.
to give the lens that they don't know what you, because the thing is, you don't know what you're missing. You don't know what you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see things from our own experience.
Yeah, thank you. And what you're saying there about institutional narcissism reminds me of Jennifer Freyd's work of betrayal trauma and betrayal blindness. And there's this idea that if we're abused by someone, but they're in a position of power, we become blind to what happened to us. And therefore we will be, oh, they're wonderful. I was having a conversation with someone recently, and they were talking to their parents, and they were saying, "Oh, I had a lovely time at boarding school." And then they said, "Oh, but this teacher, my housemaster, oh, he was sent to prison for paedophilia. Oh, and yes, he did abuse me at one point." And you're like, it's the story, the betrayal blindness at the beginning. Oh, no, it's fine. But once you dig beneath the surface and you ask the questions, you realize actually it wasn't quite as rosy. And that's why I love the biographies is, I've collected 50 odd, and I've bought, as I showed you, I bought this one yesterday, and you're like, well, Paris Hilton. But you read what happened to her in boarding school in America. it's just horrific. She was put in solitary confinement, and it's like it happens across the globe, and it's like those stories we say, oh, it's fine, but then it's like David Cameron's story. I'm always shocked when I kind of re-look at that. He just says, oh, I lost a stone in weight in a single term. And I looked up, you've heard me speak about this on the podcast many times, but I looked up what's the average weight of a 7-year-old when he got to school? It's 3.5 stone to 4 stone. To lose a stone, that's like a third to a quarter of your body weight. If I lost 3 to 4 stone, I'd be just skin and bones.
Mm, mm.
And these are the stories, and it's like, yeah, so it gets me quite passionate when I
Well, just
hear
all this
these things.
stuff ends up getting normalized, particularly when we're so young. It's
Yeah.
it's hard for us to separate. Things happen as an adult, you've probably got more of a reference.
Mm, 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 mm,
But when
mm,
you're going through neurodevelopmental before you even really hit maturity or puberty or neurodevelopment is kind of has yet to happen.
mm,
It's hard
mm.
to know the impact.
Yeah, and it's that thing that, like you say, I always thought when I was at boarding school that I had it easy. And I did, compared with the other kids. I was good at sport, so I didn't get the bullying. But then when I shared story of, oh yeah, I was sexually abused, and, oh yeah, a friend committed suicide, jumped in front of a train, they're like, what?
Mm.
You tried to take your own life? It's like, but yeah, but I was lucky compared to the others because it was normalized. It's like, yeah, but they were beaten. They were stuck under the shower or whatever. It's like, I didn't get that. And it's only later when we start to share the stories and people are like, that's not normal.
But I think part of our experience is that stoicism
Mhm.
that we need to get through it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I think in some ways we need to um, I suppose train what am I trying to say? In some way we need to put it in a way that we can survive and get through it.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So we create our own narrative, I suppose, with ourselves.
Yeah, I think that stoicism, which I see in the corporate world now, we're calling it resilience. We're calling it stoic, but no, let's just call it what it is. It's dissociation.
Yeah,
It's splitting off from feelings. It's like, just
yeah,
push through. It's like, no, that's not healthy. That's not resilience. True resilience is community, it's feeling, it's going within. It's like what we're labeling as resilience is it's dissociation or stoicism. No, that's dissociation.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. And it's certainly not it's survival.
yeah.
And I look at a lot of the Dilworth guys, it's when shit goes down, we can survive when it's bad.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens when it's normal or good? Can we what are we like then? You know?
Yeah, yeah. So,
And I
I
see a
mean,
lot, a lot of these guys that have just failed to launch because survival is kind of as good as they're ever going to get.
mm, mm. So kind of moving forward, you know, if th- a vision for the future of what will happen, to paint that, you know, survivor lens of what needs to happen. What is your vision, whether it's 5 years, whether they do it or not, but what's the vision that you would like to see, Neil?
Well, the thing about this is that the trust board, they've even surprised my lawyers. My lawyers thought that they would give a millimeter and
Mm,
they just won't budge.
mm,
So there's very much a sense of, nah, we're fine. There's no higher authority that can tell us what to do. They've got legal advice, I think, that says just hang in there. It'll eventually go away. You'll be fine. Just do nothing. Just it's what they've done for 70 years and it's been effective. So you just keep the ball there. and um, and I think they look at it and go, well, the laws, the application of laws are really, insipid here. Chances are there's not really going to be too much likelihood um, that they will be held to account by any kind of higher authority. They're one of the wealthiest trusts in the Southern Hemisphere. They got lots of lawyers, they got lots of money, and they just want to spend it on lawyers, not use it to help with the people that they've harmed. Um, and it'll eventually just go away. But I suppose my mission is to not make it go away until I get a sense that I can sit down, and I don't know what that looks like, Piers. I don't know when I'm going to get to a point and go, it is done, it's finished, and I can kind of close that chapter and get on with my life, because I think it's becoming something that I never really expected or necessarily wanted. But I know that my role is needed,
Mhm.
and as a collective voice, it has real meaning for others. I know that, and so it's just a question of perseverance and pacing things so that I don't it doesn't wear me down and shorten my life or whatever, or impact too much on my relationship with my partner. It's a it's a it's a real balancing act, and it's quite hard. And I there are times I just yeah, I'm not there are times I'm not very good
Yeah,
at it
yeah,
at
yeah,
pacing it
yeah. Me too.
and saying no and putting up boundaries. And putting up boundaries. There's a lot of Dilworth guys that want to just talk and chat, and I've always got an ear for them, but it's at the expense of time with my partner. And there are
Mhm.
times I probably could sort of cut things cut things off earlier, but
Mhm. Mhm.
it's I just I care. I
Mhm.
care too much, I suppose.
Yeah, and it is. I think it is that balance of most Jung's idea on the podcast. Have talked about this idea of the archetypes, and the sovereign archetype serves, but he's also got to fill his own cup up or her cup up. And I see
Mm.
that's important for us with this work. And, I reflect back, as I mentioned before we began, my wife died 6 months ago. And part of me was like, I didn't give as much to her in the last few years because I was focused on the documentary. And part of me feels some sadness and some grief there. And so it's like that balance and that dance of, yeah, filling ourselves up. I found that after she died is just getting back onto doing a practice. So meditation, going for a run, spending time in nature, spending time with friends, and doing my work.
Mm.
We were a couple of weeks out from the premiere of the documentary before when she died. So it's like, well, how do I deal with this? And it was like, just keep taking care of yourself. And I see that there is that dance that if
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
we're just going to burn out if we don't. And I love what you said about your partner with the canary in the coal mine. It's like, yeah, we've got to make sure we take care. And
Well,
uh,
she wants to be tweeting in the trees. She doesn't want to be taken down the mine. She doesn't like
yeah,
it.
no, no, yeah, and it's a difficult
But she
one.
respects she respects what I'm doing and understands how important it is. But
Yeah,
she's um she's she walks every step of this with me as well.
yeah. Well, bless her for all her support. And I couldn't have done what I'm doing now without Michelle. My
Mm.
wife, she was there supporting me the 20 years. And I think that's important for me to acknowledge. It's like, yeah, I stand on the shoulders of giants. My wife, Nick Duffel-Joy, so many people who've done this work, and I think maybe that's the big shift for me with doing this work is at school we were on our own. We had, we felt isolated, and now, like you said, it's like we're a community, and there's so many of us, and it's like that strength. I felt that with the abuse survivors from my school. There's feels like family now, going back. There's 60, 70 of us who, and the reality is it's only 1 in 9, 1 in 10 who've come forward.
Mm.
So you mentioned 300. Well, there's probably, according to Alex Renton's research, there's another, you know, 8 out of 9 who haven't come forward. So yeah, I think it's, you know, having that community to we can do this. And I love what you've just said. It's like the school's not being held to account. So it's like having that vision that, yeah, no, the school will be held to account. We don't know how yet, but we will find a way.
Oh, look, I'll find a way, and it's it'll happen. It'll happen, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with or without me, I've got a strong legal team
Mm-hmm.
that are behind me, pro bono. They get it, they see it, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's not the end of things, but it's when we're looking at litigation and it's a lot of this I think is legal precedence.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're dealing with that, you're not quite sure what happens when you're dealing with something that doesn't have a precedence.
Mm-hmm.
You're relying on people to see how important this is
Mm-hmm.
rather than diminish it because there's nothing to compare it to.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's just a little bit of a dance, as you say, it's a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my big things in life is disappointment is relative to expectation. So I'm very, very mindful of and that served me well because I've been disappointed a lot. I watched Mr. Bates in the post office.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Unbelievable. The parallels, Teresa and I were watching it and our jaws were dropping in terms of the parallels. And I'm like, I'm only 7.5 years in, he's 20 years in. And it's almost like there's this playbook.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
just the institutional cover-up playbook?
Mm-hmm.
It's you look at these things that you think are quite unique, and you suddenly go, "Man, they had that as well."
There's so
Just like
many which have come forward in the last couple of years in the UK. We've had the blood cover up. They gave, infected blood to people. And, there's been so many just over the last few
is
years.
that the CJD one? You mean
I don't know if it's the CJD. It's the one
mental
in
health?
the UK. It
Yeah.
was the NHS one.
Oh, okay. I haven't heard about that one. I think. I'll
Okay,
give.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so basically it was I think it was the 80s and 90s. They were looking for blood, so the NHS got blood from, I think it was the NHS from America, but it was from infected people. And
Right. I see.
and so they gave this blood to people and they became sick, and then they've tried to campaign, and it was just cover up, and then there was an inquiry, and a judge campaigner basically did the report, and that came forward last year, and it was like, so just saying this is a disgrace, really. And we've had so many. And similar to you, we've had the child sexual abuse, the ICSO report here, and there was 20 recommendations which came out of that. And that was 2022 when it came out. 3 years on, none of the recommendations have been implemented. And it reminds me of Dilworth. You've got 19 recommendations, and they will consider them.
They will consider them.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lord came out talking about these inquiries and saying that basically what an inquiry is for is to kick the problem into the long grass. Because you're saying, oh, we're doing something about it, but actually, when the recommendations come through, nothing's done about it.
Well, it's not binding. And there's
Exactly.
nothing in the inquiry that says those inquirers can come back and actually see where they're up to. And see, the institution that did the harm wrote the scope of the inquiry and funded
Mm,
the inquiry. And what they did, they were quite strategic about how they wrote the scope. They put
mm,
limitations on the work of the inquirers that the inquirers probably didn't realize the ramifications of that until they got in there and realized information that came forward was actually out of scope. So they were unable to report on it. And I was out of scope to the inquiry. I had over a 100-page report on my dealings with the trust board that they Dilworth refused to allow me to meet the inquirers because I was out of scope.
What does out
But
of
then they had a
scope
chat.
mean?
Well, out of scope meant that it went from inquiry went up to the beginning of 2018. They weren't allowed to look at anything after 2018. And you're going, well, what are they trying to hide?
Yeah.
Were they trying to hide because I started dealing with the trust board at the beginning of 2018? Was it over me? Was it over some financial payouts that they'd made to other victims, maybe that they were trying to hide?
Mm,
There were things in there that obviously they didn't want the inquirers to look at. Otherwise, I don't know why you would put a limit on that otherwise.
mm,
And yeah, certain things um, yeah, were then considered out of scope. But then they had a chapter 8 on the school now. And so the inquirers got to report on the things that the school was doing in terms of processes and protocols.
mm.
And they were complimentary on some of the things that the school had done. Yet I wasn't allowed to submit my input of the school today. So
Mm,
they prevented me from giving input into their chapter 8 on the school now, school of today. And they came through saying that the report was unsparingly honest, and but the school's doing a good job now. That
wow.
was their interpretation of the report. It's like,
Wow. So as we start to wrap this up, Neil, what would you like, someone who's listening to this, what would be your message to them about whether, you know, child sexual abuse or campaigning or, what would your message be?
I think we just got to keep making waves, really, in our own way. We've just got to keep, there are things over here. I look at it that, I'm loosening screws in this glass ceiling because we're going to have to smash through a ceiling.
Mm, mm,
Um, what what I want to achieve means breaking the ceiling.
mm,
So if if I just loosen some screws and someone in the future smashes it, great. But we just got to contribute to loosening those screws and creating waves, because what we know is that no child that is sexually abused is ever okay. It's one of those things that is really damaging. And I think as a society, we really got to take that seriously, because you're ruining the potential of a kid by not keeping them safe. And there's many things in society that are failing, but I think the importance of child safety is probably the most important. I think our kids are precious, and we need to look after them, and not just our own, but I think we need to look after
mm.
all the children of the world. to try and give them the best chance of a quality of life that they deserve. And so I think really we just my advice is to dance and pace whatever we do, but do it in a way that we're taking those opportunities to do things when we're inspired to do them, when we feel like the time's right and we feel strong enough, then that's the time to act and to do something, even just something little, because it's collective. And
Yeah.
I love this opportunity, Piers, because I'm doing this work in New Zealand here, and it's what I'm realizing is it's crossing to the other side of the world. We're all doing work for each other.
Yeah. Well,
And I really
bless.
acknowledge what you're doing.
Well, thank you. And you're really inspiring, you know. And big thank to Mark for connecting us, Mark
Yeah.
Stauffer, and,
Oh,
bless
Mark's
you.
amazing. Amazing.
Yeah, what a powerful man. And
What he
that's,
went through. What he went through was just
yeah,
absolutely horrific.
yeah. His film is incredible as well and really touching. And yeah, again, it just reminds me, I mean, kind of, it's an aside here, but in the 90s, one of my housemasters met the headmaster of Dilworth. He came to my boarding school, and and it's like he was like, "Oh, come and visit my boarding school in New Zealand when you're there." And it's like just this network of these schools that weren't taking care of children. So I love that, like keep making waves, loosening the screws to the glass ceiling. It's like, yeah, it's just little bit by little bit by little bit. And it's so
Yeah.
powerful that there's so many of us doing this work. So thank
Yeah,
you.
it's a collective vote.
Yes, definitely. We kind of, it happened to us, you know, someone who I interviewed a few years ago mentioned that, this trauma happened in the group and therefore we can heal in the group.
Yeah.
And I really see that. So thank you so much for your
I feel it.
time.
I feel it. I feel it from you.
Yeah,
We're a brotherhood. We're a brotherhood, mate.
we,
And
we
I'd
are.
love to
So
meet you in person one day.
yeah, well, when you're in Yorkshire, or if I come to New Zealand at some point, maybe we
Oh
do
yeah.
a world tour of boarding on
Let's hang
insanity.
out. Hang out.
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. So, yeah, thank you so much for your time. And if I can support in any way, please let me know.
Cool. Thanks, mate.
Okay.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah. Blessings.